The sun blazed hot over the dusty main street of Willow Creek, where the wind carried with it the faint smell of horses and dry earth, rattling the loose shutters of abandoned buildings that stood like old ghosts from another time. And as the sound of wagon wheels echoed slowly down the road, Caleb Turner tugged the brim of his weathered hat lower, his eyes narrowing against the light as he stood with his back to the livery stable, arms crossed, waiting for the woman who was supposed to become his bride. He had spent months writing letters to a woman he had never seen, a mail-order bride from back east who promised in ink and careful words that she would bring companionship to his lonely ranch. A woman he imagined as quiet, modest, and perhaps plain, someone who would not ask for more than he could give, someone who would not stir the silence he had built round himself like armor since the war. But as the wagon creaked to a stop in front of him and the flap of the canvas cover shifted, what stepped down was not the woman he had imagined, but another altogether, a tall, striking widow with dark eyes that seemed to see straight into his guarded soul, her face carved with both beauty and a weary strength. A baby balanced in her arms, and 4 children of varying ages trailing behind her, their clothes worn, their shoes dusty from the long journey, their small faces looking both fearful and curious as they took in the unfamiliar town. Caleb's breath caught, his first thought that there had been some mistake. And yet the way the woman held her chin high, meeting his gaze without flinching, told him she had come here not by accident, but by choice or necessity. Though what sort of necessity could drive a widow with 5 children into the arms of a stranger he could not begin to fathom, and the silence stretched between them until one of the little girls tugged at her, mother's skirt whispering, and the widow finally spoke. Her voice low but steady. "Mr. Turner, I'm not the bride you expected, but I am the woman who came." The words hung in the hot air like a challenge, and Caleb felt the foundations of the quiet, controlled life he had built begin to tremble. For here was no timid bride to slip into the background of his ranch, but a woman with burdens and fire in her eyes, and children whose futures now seemed tied to his, whether he willed it or not. And though every instinct in him screamed to step back, to send her away before her presence could unravel the fragile order of his days, something deeper, something older and more human, urged him to take a step forward instead. Caleb Turner had always prided himself on being a man of few words and fewer attachments. But as he walked beside the widow and her 5 children, leading them from the dusty street toward the edge of town where his wagon and team waited, he felt the weight of decisions pressing down harder than the desert sun overhead. For nothing in his careful plan had prepared him for this turn of fate. Her name, he soon learned, was Margaret Hale, though she told him to call her Maggie, and when she spoke it was with a quiet authority that made it plain she was no fragile flower, but a woman who had endured hunger, grief, and hardship, and had somehow kept her dignity intact, her back straight and her voice steady, even when the children tugged and fussed at her skirts, and Caleb, though not a man given to softness, found himself respecting her instantly, even as a voice inside him whispered. That respect could too easily grow into something far more dangerous. The journey back to his ranch took the better part of an hour, the wagon rattling along the rutted road through open fields of sun-bleached grass, the children dozing against one another while the baby stirred fitfully in his mother's arms, and Caleb kept his eyes fixed on the trail ahead, pretending not to notice how the setting sun painted Maggie's hair in a burnished halo, pretending not to care that her presence filled the empty silence he had once cherished. By the time they reached his homestead, a simple spread of weathered barns, a corral with a few horses, and the squat log cabin he had built with his own hands, the children were wide-eyed with awe, pointing and whispering. For though the place was humble, it seemed a kingdom, compared to the broken wagons and endless roads they had known, and Caleb, stepping down to help them, felt a peculiar tightening in his chest when Maggie's hand brushed his as he steadied her. The cabin was neat but stark, A single room with a stone hearth, a sturdy table, and the smell of cedar from the wood stacked along the wall. And though Maggie offered no complaint, Caleb caught when the children finally drifted to sleep and Maggie lingered near the fire, her eyes lifting to his with a question she did not voice. Caleb turned away too quickly, muttering something about an early morning's work, because he was not ready to admit that the loner rancher who had sworn never to love again was already losing the battle against the quiet power of a widow who had come to him not as a bride but as a force of fate.